Hi everyone, this is Instructor Hernandez, and I'm using this video lecture to further discuss essay number 2, which you will be working on this week. Just to review, this is the essay prompt that you will be responding to in your essays. In a 500 to 750 word essay, discuss who you think has the most effective method for learning, Santiago or the Englishman, and why. Provide specific examples from the book to support your ideas. Be sure to include at least one counter-argument to your thesis. So let's back up a little bit and review these two characters. The Englishman, as we know, he is a big believer in book knowledge, but he has little practical knowledge. And he's attempting to learn alchemy through his intellect. And we discussed on Monday how he serves as a foil or a contrasting character to the main character, which is Santiago. And we know that Santiago enjoys a life of interaction and he is on a journey with a purpose. He also believes in the importance of action, personal experience, and observation. Something important to keep in mind is that this is not a compare and contrast essay. So you're not going to be discussing both characters and how they are similar or how they are different, or providing a long summary of the book for your essay. Your essay should include a short summary of the book, and I'll discuss that more in a couple of slides. What you want to focus on for this essay instead is forming an argument and arguing who you think has the most effective method for learning and why that is. And in terms of support, you will be using direct quotes or paraphrases from the book to support your ideas. And you're also going to include a counter argument as well as your response to that counter argument. In terms of how to organize your essay, I will refer you to the sample that's on page 91 or section W12B of the Little Seagull Handbook. That section is on what are called summary response essays, which is a type of essay you will be writing for essay number 2. And I especially like the sample organization or the structure that is given in that section, which includes a summary of the book that's followed by your response to it. So summary response essays should begin with a summary of the text that you're responding to. And in this case, you will be summarizing The Alchemist, but only up to the pages that we have read so far. We haven't finished the book, so your summary should focus on what we've read, and especially it should highlight the sections that discuss Santiago and the Englishman, since that's what your essay will be about. An effective summary should start off by identifying the author and the title of the book. And you want to introduce the author and the book by using what's called a signal phrase. And you can see more samples of signal phrases on page 87 of the Little Seagull Handbook. Your summary, like I mentioned, should include only the content that we have read so far in this class. So you can look back at your reading logs to see at what point your summary should stop. And you also want to focus on the sections of the book that discuss these two characters. Make sure that the summary is in your own words and that you don't have any direct quotes in your summary. Here are some tips for how to write an effective summary, since I know this is something a lot of students struggle with. First, you want to make sure to read and annotate the book. And even if you've already read the sections that you'll be writing about, it's not a bad idea to go back and reread them. And remember that you have an annotation tool in Brightwave, so you can annotate the online version of the book and then refer to your annotations when you're writing your summary. A summary should also be concise Typically, a summary should be only 10% of the length of the original text. So since we're not even summarizing the entire novel, we're only summarizing part of it, your summary should be no more than a paragraph. And a good place to put your summary is in your introduction. However, you can also have a separate introduction that doesn't include a summary of the book and then follow that up with a brief summary. Just make sure that your summary is no more than one paragraph. It's also important that a summary is accurate. So this is another reason why you may want to go back and reread the sections that you're writing about. Your summary shouldn't state any events in the book that are not necessarily true, or you shouldn't retell any parts of the book in a way that is not accurate of what's in the book itself. And a summary should also be neutral, so you're not giving your opinion on the book or even on any of the characters. Imagine that you're telling someone who hasn't read the book before what the book is about, and that's a good way to start your summary. And finally, like I mentioned on the slide before, make sure to use your own words and do not include any direct quotes in your summary. Following your summary or your introduction, you want to make sure that you have a very clear thesis statement that responds to the writing prompt itself. And I have a sample here. You don't have to construct your thesis statement in the same way, but this will just give you an idea of how you can start your thesis statement. And you want to keep in mind that you are constructing an argument and supporting your position with reasons and evidence. So your essay, like I said, should not be one long summary of the book or should just go point by point in terms of the plot. The bulk of your essay is going to be your argument in terms of who you feel has a better way of learning. And you want to make sure that you don't go on too long with your summary. So keep your summary to one paragraph. In the Little Seagull, you can find more information on argumentative writing on page 53, or if you're using the online version, you would want to refer to section W8. These are some basic components of an argumentative essay. First, you have a clear and arguable position. So what that means is by reading your essay, someone can tell which position you're taking, and also someone can argue against your position. So you don't have to prove absolutely that yours is the correct position. You just want to make a strong argument in favor of your position. An argumentative essay should also have necessary background information for your audience. So this is where the summary comes into play. It should have good reasons in support of your position, similar to essay number 1. Even though that essay was a reflective essay, you were still asked to provide a thesis and reasons of support for your thesis statement. And finally, your essay should have convincing evidence. So you want to make sure whatever quotes you're using from the book, they're being used for a reason to support your ideas and not just to take up space, and that each quote is in your essay for a reason. In terms of the counter argument, this shouldn't be a hostile argument because both positions have what I think good reasons and evidence in the book in favor of either one. So you're not arguing a position, like I said, that no one can argue against. It's just a matter of how strongly you can support your argument. When you're writing your counter argument, you should focus on summarizing the opposing view in a way that is accurate and neutral. So similar to the summary of the book, you're just restating what someone could say as opposed to your viewpoint. And you also want to respond to the counter argument. So you should defend your position. For example, if you feel that Santiago has the best way of learning because he learns through experience, then your counter argument would discuss why some people may think that the Englishman's way of learning or learning through books and intellect is more effective. But ultimately, you will still argue that Santiago has the advantage and give specific reasons for that. In terms of quoting from the book for your evidence, section R4 of The Little Seagull discusses a few different ways that you can quote from a source. So I'm going to briefly go over those three methods, which include direct quotations, paraphrases, and block quotes. A direct quote, if you're using MLA format, is a quote that is 3 lines or less. So if you find a quote in the book and you type it in your essay and you see that the quote is more than 3 lines, then that's a quote that is too long for this essay and one that you should not use as a direct quote. Direct quotes should be introduced by a signal phrase. You don't want to start a sentence with a direct quote. You want to introduce it in some way. And direct quotes should also have what are called in-text citations. In MLA format, an in-text citation is the author's last name and the page number. And you can just use the page number for whatever version of The Alchemist you're reading. I know that all of our page numbers are a little bit different. So if you're reading the book on Canvas, just use the page numbers that are in that version. Here's an example of a direct quote and a signal phrase that introduces the quote. So let's say you're discussing how Santiago prefers to learn. Santiago prefers to learn from the world around him rather than his book. So those are my own words as the writer of this essay. When he's part of the caravan traveling through the desert, he tries to read his book, but so that right there is the signal phrase. I'm setting up the quote and I'm introducing the context of the quote to the reader. And we know that the direct quote is starting because we're using quotation marks. He found it much more interesting to observe the caravan and listen to the wind. So the direct quote is enclosed in quotation marks, and that is taken word for word from the book. I didn't change any of the wording. And the in-text citation follows the quotation marks, and it comes before the period. A block quote is another type of direct quote, but it's longer, so it's more than 3 lines. And in MLA format, you would not use quotation marks, but you would still have an in-text citation. And I don't want to spend too much time on block quotes because I would like you to avoid using any block quotes for this essay. This essay is not long enough to justify the use of a block quote. Since block quotes are very long, they take away from your voice and your own ideas. So please try not to use those in this essay. Look for quotes that are 3 lines or less, and there's plenty of them to choose from in the book. Finally, a paraphrase is something that you put into your own words. So you can either take what would be a direct quote or something that happens in the book, and you're using your own words, but you still have an in-text citation because these are not your ideas. You're describing something that happened in the book. You're just not using the exact words of the author. Paraphrases are a little tricky. It can be very hard to put something into our own words, especially when it's coming from a book that we have been reading. We may attempt to put something into our own words and inadvertently use the words of the author. When you're using a paraphrase, you want to be careful not to copy the exact wording or even the sentence structure of the original quote. If you write a paraphrase and you compare it to the original source material and you find that it too closely resembles what is written in the book, then I think it's more effective to just use a direct quote. For further reading on signal phrases, formatting direct quotes, and paraphrases and summarizing, section R4 of Little Seagull has a lot of detailed information, and it also has really good examples. So I would strongly encourage you to read that section as you're writing your first draft if you haven't already. And you also want to make sure to read the section on summary and response essays as well, since this is the type of essay you will be writing for essay number 2. So just to recap, I have the essay 2 instructions pulled up from the Canvas site. You want to make sure to read the instructions clearly as you're writing your draft and refer to them often to make sure that you're staying on track. Make sure that you review the requirements as well and that your essay is fulfilling those requirements. Your draft is due on Sunday on Canvas, and you will submit it online. And remember that we have the peer review the next Monday, so you will bring printed copies of your essay in order to participate in the peer review. For the preliminary draft, you are not required to submit a works cited page, even though we are quoting from the book. That can just be submitted with your final draft. So don't forget to bring the printed copies of your draft to participate in the peer review. I've sent some places on campus that you can print for free, and I'll send those again just in case you need that information. And remember that for this essay, in addition to the peer review, you can either meet with Instructor Campbell or you can meet with a writing tutor to review either your preliminary draft or after the peer review, you can have your essay reviewed before it's submitted for the final draft. And don't forget to submit the final draft on time and make sure that you have revised further, especially after the peer review and after you meet with a tutor. If you have any questions about the essay, feel free to reach out to me before Sunday, and I look forward to reading all of your first drafts.